All right, we're rolling on cream of tomato soup. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, and I hear this from time to time when I teach people how to make this, or they have choices of different soups that they're going to make, and this is on the list. This is the sleeper. This is the hidden cream of tomato soup that wipes people out. They just love this soup. And I would say probably best characterize this by saying there's cream of tomato soup and then there's cream of tomato soup. The cream of tomato soup over here that we're used to that comes in a can is not like this at all. This is very, very special soup and has a lot of very special ingredients in it. And I'm about to walk you through that process right now. First, we have some rendered bacon, which is what we're going to cook the primary veg to begin with in, and the bacon fat right here. In accordance to the prescription in the ingredient list, we'll add the bacon. We will add the onions. We will add the celery. We will add the mushroom. We will add the dried basil, dried oregano. You can use fresh if you want. Dried works just fine with this. This soup will be pureed later. All these ingredients are going to become smooth, and then we're going to put garnish in the soup. We have, instead of tomato paste, which is what the recipe calls for, I'm going to show you how to touch it up with tomato concasse, which you also have the formula for. And the dried oregano. And in this case, I think we're going to use a little bit of butter because there's not enough bacon fat to satisfy the sauteing needs of all these veg. So we're going to give that a little mix. And we're going to give you a time-elapse progress report on this in about 5 minutes. We're going to be sauteing the veg, and I'll be back in 5 minutes in real time to complete this process, which is going to include adding garlic, adding white wine, reducing it, adding the tomato, adding a little bit of stock, bringing it to a simmer. This particular soup, with the ingredients that we have in it, shouldn't need a thickening agent specifically added to it to thicken it. If it does, we'll add it at the end, if we think it does, okay? So we'll be right back in a few minutes as this sautés, okay? All right, we're rolling back on a cream of tomato soup. About 7 minutes has elapsed since I said goodbye a minute ago. And let me show you what we got here. We've got sauteed onion, mushroom, celery, with a little bit of dried oregano, dried basil, with bacon and bacon fat, and a little bit of the butter, okay? This soup already sounds good, doesn't it? Now you're wondering, how is this cream of tomato soup? This is how, okay? First, we're going to add some fennel seeds to the soup. And it'll give it that slight licorice flavor. You'll notice that in your ingredient list, I have Pernod, which is French anisette, if you will, listed as a flavoring option at the end during the finishing process. We're not going to use any of it today, but it's certainly an option. But you don't need it. This soup is great without it. All right, we got enough fennel seeds in there. And now we're going to put the garlic in there. And then we're going to pour the white wine on there, and we're going to reduce it. We're going to time-elapse that for you for a moment. Garlic. Again, this soup can absorb more garlic than a lot of other soups can. Some soups can't absorb very much garlic at all, and you better be careful how much you put in. This cream of tomato has a little bit of liberal elbow room for the cook in it, okay, without it being overdone on the garlic. So we'll put a pinch more in there. Being careful not to burn the garlic, we're just cooking it briefly for a second, and then we're going to add the white wine to it. You burn that garlic, it permeates the whole soup with burnt garlic. It, in my opinion, ruins the soup, okay? So now we're going to hit it with the white wine. Got a couple of cups on there. And we're going to time-elapse that for a couple of minutes, and that's going to reduce down. And I'll be right back in about 3-4 minutes while that reduces by 75%. Then we'll add the tomatoes, a little bit of stock, and then we're going to time-elapse the shoot again for about 10, 15, 20 more minutes while the soup cooks and becomes tender enough to puree, okay? But for right now, let's let the wine reduce for about 5 to 8 minutes, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. About 7 minutes has elapsed, and the wine has reduced. As you can see, it has a very small amount of liquid now in this pan, which we started with, which was bacon fat and celery and onions and a little bit of dried oregano and dried basil. And we put a little bit of butter in there to supplement the amount of bacon fat that we had. Now that the wine's reduced, we're going to add the canned diced tomatoes, which was the choice I made for this demonstration, versus the fresh. And, oh, we'll just put them all in there. And we're going to add a little bit of stock to this. Keeping in mind that there's a lot of juice from the tomatoes. And I have some tomato juice set aside, which we may use as a way of thinning it out if it's a little too thick later. But I think, as a matter of fact, give me some of that tomato juice now, Louis. We're going to add, because there really isn't even enough liquid in here now. We're going to add some tomato juice to it now. Then we're going to time elapse this. We're going to let it simmer for about 20 or 30 minutes. Now I want to show you the thickness level here of soup to, I should say, liquid to food. As you can see here, it's kind of juicy. That's good. Now we're going to let this simmer again, like I said, for about a half an hour. I'm going to be back in a half an hour, and I'll let you know exactly how long it took. And at that point, we're going to puree it, butter it, cream it, finish it, garnish it, and put it in a bowl. So we'll be back in about 30 minutes to finish off this great cream of tomato soup. We're back with the completion of the cream of tomato soup. And we sauteed the onions and celery with the fennel seeds and garlic. And we reduced some white wine over it. We had bacon and mushrooms in there. And then we added tomatoes and a little bit of stock, and we've been cooking it for about a half an hour, which is all it takes, because there's not that much food in here that's hard enough that isn't already ready to puree. So it wasn't like we were cooking beans or potatoes or something. So this is soft and ready to puree, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with it right now. We're going to put it in a container that's a little bit more, I need a ladle is what I need, a little more conducive to pureeing it, because trying to puree it in a pot like this is too hard. You don't get enough turbulence the way you need it. Thank you, sir. Which kind of make the pureeing process a little faster and smoother. Keeping in mind, you know, things puree faster when they're hot than when they're not hot, too. Okay. I think we'll be able to finish this soup right here in this pot. So let's give it a zap and start that process. And unfortunately, I can't really talk to you when I'm doing this because it's too noisy. Give me the sausage. We are going to add a little bit of sausage and some tomato concasse, cream and butter to this soup. Thank you. Now the texture of this soup is fairly close to where it needs to be already. You see that? That's nice. Now we added no specific thickening agent to this for the reason of making it thick. There's something about the tomatoes, the onions, and celery and the amount of liquid we had proportionally to that that made this puree the right texture. And we normally I do not prescribe a thickening agent for this particular soup formula. Now I'm going to add a little bit of soft butter to this, which traditionally would be in the proportion of 2 ounces of whole unsalted butter per quart. We got a couple of quarts of soup here, so we add about 4 ounces of butter to it. And we're going to need the fresh basil over here. And another saute pan. Okay, that looks good. Let's give that a taste. Thank you, sir. Now I have the cream reducing over here. As you see, I have a couple of cups here. And we'll add that to it also. Where's my spoon? Give that a zap. Okay, let's give that a taste. Now this soup always needs a lot of adjustments at the end. And I need a saute pan to saute the sausage in. I think there's a small one right over there. Let's do this here. Let's get the fresh basil chopped. And basil, sausage, sauteed mushrooms are all good working parts for the garnish for this soup. We're going to take this amount of basil and we're going to use it right on top of the soup in the bowls themselves. But we're going to saute a little bit of that sausage for the whole lot. We got some Italian spicy smooth sausage here, which is nice, and we're going to put a little bit of butter in our saute pan here. And give this sausage a zap. I want to brown it up just a little bit. The sausage is already cooked. And I have some tomato concasse, which you can either put in each individual bowl of the soup or you can incorporate it into the whole thing. Now, in this particular case, I think I'm going to put it in all of the soup. And we have a fresh tomato here. Let me have a fresh tomato, and we'll use that also. Now, this soup is going to need sugar because of all this tomato. It has that acidic effect. So this is sugar I'm putting in it now. And this is salt. And this is pepper. Thank you. More sugar. The soup needs a lot of adjustment, too. You can't just throw a few things at the end of this one in and it'll be done. It's not that simple. Some soups are like that, but this is not one of them. Let's see how that's doing. This needs more salt and more sugar. It's not getting sweet, by the way. It's just kind of deflecting and mellowing the acidity of the tomato, and it's working. It's coming out good. I think that's probably going to do it. Let's shut that sausage off there real quick. That did it. It's good. Now, what we're going to do here is a couple of different ways to garnish the soup. This soup is just a little too thick for me. I'm going to add a little bit of water to this. Remember, we're not thinning it out because we're adding water to it rather than chicken stock. We have so much reduced stock in here from that whole cooking process. We're basically just reconstituting some of the stock that we already put in it. So we're not diluting it, even though it's being diluted for a moment. But in the big picture, it hasn't been diluted, see? So sometimes you can just add a little water to it. You don't have to add stock. It's rich enough without the addition of more in-depth type flavor stuff. This is good. It's good. It needs a little bit more water. It's still too thick. Now it needs a pinch more salt, a pinch more sugar. One more quick taste. Soup is good. All right, here's a good presentation. Now I have a single crouton over there, Louis. Can you give it to me, please? Nice looking tomato. I ate the crouton, never mind. You can put a crouton on here if you want, but let's go with some fresh basil. And let's go with a little bit of sausage. And let's do a little bit of what we call tomato brunoise, okay? finely diced tomato with the skin on. Brunoise, meaning the size of the cut. This is a brunoise size cut, okay? So we've got a little bit of diced tomato. We'll put that on there. And we'll throw a pinch of chopped parsley on there. And there you go. This is this particular soup, it certainly would be a specific formula kind of soup. This is a cream of tomato soup that has an underlying flavor of smoked bacon mixed with fennel seeds and mushrooms and garlic and white wine. This is almost like a sauce, but not quite that strong. But it has some very startling characteristics when you first taste it. And I hope you get a chance to make it and enjoy it. And for now, that would be the end of the cream of tomato soup, and good luck with it. You'll do well with it.